An appeal to the people of Ukraine who I, as a person of Oirat Kalmyk origin, express solely my personal views and feelings. I do not speak on behalf of any organizations, parties, or structures, only on my own behalf, and I speak sincerely, with pain in my heart. It hurts me to see a bloody war taking place in Ukraine, where defenders of the country and peaceful civilians are dying. I have no and can have no grievances against the heroic Ukrainian people who are resisting the Russian occupiers at the cost of their own lives. For me and my people, you are a beacon of freedom. I deeply regret that some of my fellow tribesmen, having been deceived and driven to the brink of poverty, are participating in this criminal war on the side of their historical enemies, the Russian Empire. We call them mankurts, traitors. Russians are recruiting impoverished people from the republics, using them as cannon fodder. This is terrifying and humiliating, and it pains us to see them going to kill Ukrainians. I do not seek to criticize or even more so, humiliate the Ukrainian people. On the contrary, I want to express my respect, sympathy, and support. I only want to voice my personal vision of what is happening and say that Ukraine is my pain and my hope. I sincerely bow before the soldiers, sergeants, sailors, officers, generals, admirals, and heroic women serving in the armed forces of Ukraine. It is they who bear the full burden of this war. It is thanks to them that Ukraine is holding on. But the Ukrainian nation should not carry the unbearable weight of war alone. I believe that, shoulder to shoulder with them, representatives of the peoples enslaved by Russia should fight, those who have consciously chosen to struggle not only for Ukraine but also for the freedom of their own lands. That is why, since 2022 and even since 2014, Chechens, Georgians, representatives of various peoples of Russia, and volunteers from around the world have been fighting alongside Ukrainian citizens to defend Ukraine and the world from Russian evil. And if the Ukrainian leadership truly wants to eliminate the eternal threat, the Russian Empire, then more representatives of peoples enslaved by the Russians should be at the front lines. Those who seek to free not only Ukraine but also their own lands from the Kremlin regime and Moscow's barbaric rule. And such people exist. They are already fighting. They are making a conscious choice. They are paying with their lives. They are ready to come to Ukraine and join this war on the side of the forces of light against the empire of evil and obscurantism. At the same time, and this is my personal position, I cannot help but express my deep disappointment with the actions of Ukraine's political leadership, which, in my opinion, does not perceive this war as a patriotic, people's protracted war that requires strategic thinking. I see tactical improvisation, private gain, and a desire to remain within the system, but I do not hear the voice of the future. This does not negate the heroism of the Ukrainian armed forces, but the moral spirit in the army and society is low, and now more than ever, the Ukrainian army, together with the entire nation, for the fourth year, or more accurately, the 12th year, continues a tense resistance against the most dangerous evil in our human world. But now is the time to finally change the situation and correct past mistakes, delusions, and the consequences of betrayals. To think more strategically and understand that the war with the Russian world will not end with a ceasefire. I am convinced that the war with the Russian world will not end by pushing the enemy back to the 1991 borders, only by bringing the war onto Russian territory, achieving total victory over the empire, and ensuring the collapse of the Russian terrorist state can peace for future generations be secured. It is now necessary to accept the harsh reality and begin developing a comprehensive strategy to dismantle the Russian Empire and form new independent states on its ruins. Ukraine should pay attention to the peoples enslaved by Russia. From the West, only a few will come to fight for Ukraine, but from among our peoples, thousands, if not millions, could come if there is the right attitude and a clear political offer. We are natural allies of Ukraine. We are as interested in your victory as you are. I have come to the following bitter but honest conclusions. There is still no systematic and productive work with the peoples enslaved by Russia and their national liberation organizations. No single legitimate representative body for these peoples has been created in Ukraine, a kind of partisan headquarters of struggle and resistance. There has been no open call to enslaved peoples to join the war on Ukraine's side as part of the Ukrainian army. No strategy has been developed for taking the war onto Russian territory. No strikes have been carried out against command centers in national republics, administrative buildings, military recruitment offices, FSB, Ministry of Internal Affairs, courts, etc. Striking these targets is equivalent to striking strategic industrial enterprises. Weakening governance and provoking administrative chaos will contribute to systemic crisis in the regions and national republics and will accelerate the collapse of the Russian Empire. When forming national units, organizational and even serious systemic mistakes were made, in particular, the inadmissible mixing with Russian units. This failed to account for the national, cultural, political, historical, and psychological specifics of the ethno-national situation. The legal status of foreign volunteer formations in the Ukrainian armed forces has not been adopted or improved. Perhaps this was done deliberately. Documents submitted to the Verkhovna Rada by representatives of peoples claiming the right to independence have been sitting untouched for more than 3 years. The General Staff and other structures are ignoring proposals from national movements on the strategic dismantling of the Russian Empire, which indicates a narrowness of strategic thinking and short-sightedness of political institutions. Systemic corruption in Ukraine has not been eradicated. On the contrary, it has intensified. Anti-corruption bodies have not been granted sufficient powers. This is confirmed by the protests that have taken place in Kyiv. Many Ukrainians are leaving the country not because of a lack of patriotism, but because they do not want to die for those who profit from war. The families of high-ranking officials live abroad in luxury. This is not fiction. Ukrainians themselves speak about it. I also want to express special concern regarding the situation with the fighters of the Nomad Unit, true allies of Ukraine, who are currently held in a migration detention center in Mykolaiv on fabricated charges. According to the information I have, responsibility lies with General Usov, who oversees the Free Russia Legion, as well as the head of the detention center, Volodymyr Tereshchuk, and others who acted in the interests of Russian special services. I state this openly. If Usov or anyone else disagrees, let them file lawsuits in international courts. 3 fighters from the Free Russia Legion, including a fighter with the call sign Joker, have also disappeared. Their fate is unknown. I have no illusions. Hoping for justice from the current authorities is naive. As long as key positions are held by people like Dmytro Usov and Volodymyr Tereshchuk, betrayal will continue, both against Ukrainians and against those who came to fight for Ukraine on behalf of their own peoples. Everything I have voiced here is not Russian disinformation. It's my personal bitter truth. I did not list hundreds of corruption cases reported to me by Ukrainian journalists. That is secondary. We also see how the West and the US are increasingly vocal about the shortcomings of Ukrainian political leadership. There are serious grounds for this, and we know who is holding Ukraine back, playing into the hands of the Russian occupiers. Until recently, I didn't even know who Usov was or that there was a migration prison in Mykolaiv. Now, not only I know, it is known in the republics and around the world. We read analytical materials by international political scientists, experts, and strategists. But we believe not so much in them as in the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian army. They are the true heroes. They give us hope for liberation. Thanks to them, we understand that freedom is possible. Even during war, it is necessary to cleanse the ranks of traitors. War is not a reason for inaction. War is a reason to act decisively and with conscience. I personally ask the Ukrainian people for forgiveness for the participation of some of my fellow tribesmen in this shameful aggression and the criminal war unleashed by Russia. Forgive us. They do not represent our people. We, the Oirats Kalmyks, were repressed by this empire, and we do not support its crimes. For our people, they are the enemy. I ask you to remember, among us, there are those who are fighting for Ukraine and for the freedom of all enslaved peoples. Today we must reflect on the future and begin to act. This appeal will be translated into English and other languages and then disseminated through international media and platforms. Let the world hear us. Let them understand what we are fighting for.